All right, everybody, we are back with another episode of Wealth for the Culture. It is your host, Ollie Brady. Now, this week, I got a big time guest, man. I came across him virtually through Bigger Pockets a while back. I don't even remember how long ago that was when I heard this episode. But if you know Bigger Pockets, you listen in, you don't see too many of us on there. So it's always like, a real big deal when I see a black person on there, I get kind of, I get interested. Then fast forward, last year we out in Dallas at a networking event, Bosses and Brunch. I actually got to meet him in person, chop it up with him a little bit. I know he mentioned like over 60 properties at that point. I don't know what he's up to now, but I know, man, real estate legend. And what caught me about his story, I'm gonna let him give a background, but just what caught me about your story is the fact that how you did it in such a way that anybody can do it. I think you mentioned you started off like a 401k to get going into real estate. So that to me, along with anybody else that has listened into your story, because you got to follow a show. So that alone
Yeah,
just
man.
lets you know that anybody can get in this game if you're just willing to go, take some action, man, to execute. So I got my man Henry on. I want to thank you again, my brother, for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate you having me, man. I know we tried to connect a couple of times and it didn't work out, so I'm glad I finally get to be here. Man, like I said, we connected at Bosses and Brunch, and I said, man, you just tell me when and where, and I'll be there. And took a little while, but we're here, man. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, sir, man. We're glad to have you on, man. And normally, how I do all these podcasts, man, I just start off. Anybody that may not be familiar with who you are because they lived under a rock, not really familiar with what you got going on, man. Can you just give everybody a little bit of your background and what you got going on, what you do?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I started investing 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, and man, out of necessity, panic, craziness, whatever you want to call it, man. I gotten into a situation. So I had a day job. I worked for Walmart. I did software analytics, software development, data analytics, I guess I should say. And so I had a great career. And I did all the things that society teaches you to do, right? You go get the job, you go to college, you get the degree, you get the job, and then you work, and then you buy a house, you get married, you buy a house, right? And so, like, I was following down that path, but what I started to realize was that once I got married, um, that path wasn't really going to get me to where I wanted to go quick enough, and it wasn't going to give me the lifestyle that I felt like I wanted, that I felt like my wife deserved. And for lack of a better term, I ended up having a panic attack because my wife and I, we bought a house together. And then when we bought the house together, the bank basically told me that they would loan to my wife, but I couldn't be on the loan because, um, because of my credit situation at the time. And so it was difficult for me to be able to buy that property because they wouldn't consider my credit. So like that's a blow when you're going to be a provider, right? Like I wanted to be able to provide my wife this house, and the bank was like, "Well, I mean, we'll consider your income, but you can't be on the loan." And so my name wasn't on the title, so that was tough, man. And then, yeah, because my credit was bad, man, and I didn't really have savings, so I wasn't bringing anything to the table other than the fact that I was a seven figure, a six figure earner, right? And so that looks good to banks, but I spent more than I made, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter if you're making six figures, five figures, seven figures. If you spend more than you make, you're still broke, right? And that was kind of like the first wake up call. And then the second wake up call was just having conversations with my wife about life and where we wanted to live and what our dream house looked like, was going to look like, and where it was going to be, and how many kids we were going to have. And I was just sitting there thinking the whole time, like, man, we barely got in this house, and how am I going to afford a dream house and kids? And like, I just realized that like the path that society put me on wasn't going to get me there. And not that it's society's fault. Like I wasn't saving money like I should have been saving. Like I just wasn't doing the right things financially. And so I thought, man, there's got to be a better way. And so I basically had a panic attack that night after those conversations. Woke up at 3 in the morning and started Googling, like, how do I make some extra money? Like, how do I dig myself out of this hole? Is basically what I was looking for. And as I was doing that Googling, I just kept coming across real estate, like articles about real estate, videos about real estate, flipping houses, rental properties. And I just thought to myself, that just sounded like something I could do. And then I saw this TED talk, and it was this kid. He was 20 years old, 20 something years old. He had like 25 properties, and he was financially free. And this was before, like, this was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah, well, a little over 4 years ago. Like, so there wasn't this whole like movement online of like
Yeah.
people that look like us talking about financial freedom and that we can get there, right? And this kid, he was a white kid, but like I watched that video and I was just like, man, if this kid figured it out, I can figure it out. And I was like, and I just kind of made a decision at 3 in the morning that I was going to figure out how to buy some real estate and get into that space. And man, I'd say from that decision took about 90 days before I bought my first house. And so a lot went on between then, right? Because I still had bad credit. I still didn't have any money. And so I had to go like, but because I made a decision, right? And I think that that's what's important here is I didn't say I'm going to try to invest in real estate, or I didn't say I'm going to see how it goes. I decided I'm going to be good at it. I decided I'm going to figure it out. And like people underestimate the power of decisions, and they underestimate the power of making your mind up, right? And so when I said I'm going to be good at this, I'm going to figure it out, like as problems started to arise, my brain started thinking about solutions, right? Instead of thinking about quitting. Does that make sense? Right? Like, and I think that's what more of us need to do is that we need to stop worrying about how we're going to do something, how it's all going to come into place, and just make the decision that you're going to figure it out. And then as you start down the path, you'll figure out a way to get to where you want to go. And hell, you may not even get to where you think you're supposed to be. I didn't think I would be sitting here doing podcasts. Like, this wasn't in the plan, right? I didn't think I would be teaching people how to do this. This wasn't in my plan, right? But it's what developed from me taking action and moving down that path, because I feel like this is the path God wanted me to be on. And if I had to try to figure it all out, like use my brain to figure it all out on the front side, like it wouldn't have been this awesome, right? Like I couldn't plan this stuff out, right? This was God's plan for me, but I had to take the action, right? Without knowing every little single step I was going to take along the way. You know what I'm
Yeah, for sure. No, it's crazy because you don't hit on a lot of stuff with that right there, right?
saying?
So it's like first thing I want to say is because you're definitely right about that mindset part because I kind of struggle with the same thing up until recently. Like I would say, oh, I'm gonna go try this out instead of being intentional about it and saying, no, I'm gonna actually go do this and execute this. And it's almost like that's exactly how things will play out until I took it serious and be like, hey, this is what I'm gonna go do. And I'm gonna start taking these steps and build on a plan to go actually, accomplish these goals. So I want everybody that's tuning in, man, just to that's the first thing. Like before you can even get anything going, you got to have the right mentality going into the situation. Because if you think it's just gonna be some like whatever thing, that's exactly what it's gonna be, and that's what you're gonna treat it like. So I definitely want to appreciate you for bringing that to the forefront. Now you also mentioned something like it's crazy because it's like I'm seeing a lot of similar like stuff I got going on like right now. Like you mentioned, like you're a six figure earner, but you were spending the money as fast as it was coming in, and that lifestyle creep is definitely something that, especially if you don't come, I don't know what you like. I guess I'll ask this question for you, like your upbringing and stuff. Were you like, did you come from a family of entrepreneurs, or your parents just like go to college and do that? Like, how was that coming up?
Yeah, my folks. So both my folks were college educated, um, and my dad was a teacher. He was a high school art teacher, and my mom, she was basically the head of the waste management department. And so I was middle class. I was upper middle class, right? I had a great upbringing, but my parents always instilled in us like they wanted us to do what they knew the path to success was, right? And the path to success for them was go to college, get a degree, get a job, work till you can retire, right? Like that's the path that they knew. And that path wasn't always available to people that look like us, right? And so it was a big deal for them to us, for us to go ahead and get our education so that we can provide for our families going forward. Now, you asked about entrepreneurship. My dad was always had a side hustle, a side business, but he and I never really talked about me doing that on my own. Like he did it because teachers didn't make a ton of money and he wanted to live a better lifestyle and he wanted to provide more for us. So he always had a side hustle. He had a arcade, he had a barbecue restaurant,
Okay, okay.
he used to sell ice cream out of like a little ice cream cart. Like he had all kinds of different side hustles all throughout my life and and before me. And it was just like, so I always saw it. So I knew it was possible, but he never was like, "Hey, this is how you start your own business." And once you go to college, don't remember that you can go and do your own thing too. Like that was never a conversation. He didn't. I don't think he wanted me to have to need that. You know what I'm saying? Like I think he
Yeah.
wanted me to get the job and do and be better than that, right? Because in his mind, he was doing it to add to his lifestyle to take care of us, right? Because he had a teacher side. And don't get me wrong, like my dad, one of the smartest people I know. He's an artist. He loves teaching art. Like he did what he loved for years, and who gets to say that, right? Like they did what they loved as a career. And so I'm not saying that he couldn't have done something else. I'm just saying he did what he loved, but he knew if I'm doing what I love and it doesn't pay well, I'm gonna go supplement that with something else. And so I got to see that blueprint, even though it wasn't like talked about. Does that make sense? So when it was time for me to think about starting my own thing, I didn't have any doubts. I didn't have any fear about starting my own business because I saw my dad do it my whole life. So I was just like, all right, we'll start a side hustle.
Okay. Yeah, that was what's up. So I mean, I get it. Like I get what you said. It's like it was a necessity more so for him instead of
Hmm.
you. It was just like a conscious choice for you to go that route, and it turned
Hmm.
out to be. Well, we already know what it's like, man. You for the people that don't
Life
know,
changing, man.
how many properties, like how many doors do you have? For everybody that don't know.
Um, Somewhere between 65 and 70. It fluctuates. I'm selling a few and buying a few always. So
All right,
somewhere in
man.
there.
Don't let that go over your head. That's crazy. Now, you say that you mentioned like basically having that reality check is what got you in the real estate and stuff like that. So what I want to talk about is like where your first deal came. Like, what was your first deal? How did that look?
Yeah, so the first deal came again because I made a decision that I was going to be an investor. And so part of that decision for me was I just started telling people that I was an investor, even though I had never done a deal. I didn't have any money. I had bad credit. Like if I met somebody, I was like, "My name is Henry. I'm a real estate investor, and I have this XYZ day job." Right? Like I took on that identity because if I didn't believe I was going to be an investor, who else was going to believe it, right? And so it was just part of that path to success for me. It was just like, all right, you're going to be an investor. Well, now you are one, right? You speak that into existence. And so I would just tell people that. And that's how I found my first deal. Somebody brought it to me. They were like, hey, I got this house. I'm in a tough situation with it. I got to sell it in the next 30 days because I got to take this money and go buy something else. And I'll cut you a good deal if you can buy it from me in the next 30 days. And so he was selling me a house that was worth 150 for 115. And as long as I could close in the time he needed to close, because he had another piece of property under contract. He had to sell this to buy that. And so I told him, yeah, I'd buy it, right? I didn't know how, but I was going to figure it out, right? And um, that was a process, man, because that was like my first lesson in entrepreneurship because I needed $20,000 for a down payment and I had 1,000. And so I had to come up with $19,000 in 30 days, right? And remember, I got into this whole situation because I was trying to figure out how to make extra money. And now I'm
Yeah.
sitting here trying to find $19,000 in 30 days. It's crazy, right? And so, but because I had made that decision to be successful and I had made the conscious decision to start telling people I was an investor, the other thing that I did was I started surrounding myself with investors. Not because I was like some wise investor. Like my thought process was just, I have no idea how to do this. So I just want to be around people that do it and maybe I'll learn something. Right. And so like anytime there was an investor meetup in my area, I was in the room. Like I went to everything. I like the real estate investment club that I found, they met 3 times a month. I was there every single time. Right. And then I found some other groups on meetup.com. I found some, like, if there was a real estate investment conversation happening in any sort of organized fashion, I made my way into that room because I just wanted to be around people that were doing it so I could figure out, like, how the heck these people are doing this stuff. And the more I got in the rooms, the more I started to realize that everybody in the room was just like me. I used to think, only super rich, wealthy people bought real estate, but it was just regular folks. So that it kind of reinforced the fact that I could do this. But all that to say, when I had to find $19,000 to buy this deal, I had a sounding board of other investors to be able to go to and say, how are y'all doing this? Like, how do I get this money? What options do I have? And so one of my uh, real estate investment buddies, who is now one of my business partners, we own 25 doors together. But he was the one who was like, hey man, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And he helped me land on the idea of a 401k loan. And so I didn't have a 401k because I was bad with money, but my wife, she had one. And so we took a loan out against our 401k, which turned out to be a cheat code, because you can borrow against your 401k and you don't have to pay penalties. You pay yourself back through your basically your employer takes the money out of your paycheck automatically and they take it out pre-tax. So it reduces your taxable income and you pay yourself interest. It's your money. And so the interest that you get just goes back into your 401k and gets invested. And so we borrowed 19 grand from there and we bought the property and then we raised the rents to market value and we rented it out for a couple of years. And then I was able to also take out a line of credit against the equity in that property because I bought it for 115. It was worth 150. And that gave me access to another $25,000 that I was able to use to buy some properties that I flipped. And then I bought some properties that I bird. And so I probably bought 10 houses or so just off rinsing and repeating that line of credit. So that first deal really got me in the game.
Hey, that was a hell of a way to start out the game then, because it's a lot of things you mentioned with that. First thing first was that you it's something I talk about on this podcast a lot, and that's just getting in the room and kind of establishing yourself, and just the ability to get in the room. I've learned because that's something I wasn't good at doing until last year. Just get in the room exposes you to different people. It's kind of like had I not been at the Boston Brunch, I would have never got introduced to you and met you. And trying to link up with somebody that has a huge following like yourself, if I ain't got that type of following or I can't really connect with you like in person, it's hard to shuffle through your DMs and stuff like that because you probably get hundreds of DMs every hour. So just getting in the room allows you to get exposure to different people and just get your name out there. Now you can start building some type of credibility with them, build a rapport, and now you have a whole network of people, and you also have access to their network as well. So I want people to understand like that's something that's real key just in anything you're gonna get to going into with it when it comes to any kind of business, real estate, whatever it is. So I'm glad you hit on that. But also, I want people to understand because what you mentioned with the 401k thing is pretty dope because I actually found out about that last year, and it's funny because I heard your episode like after I ended up doing it, but I did it more so to be a private money lender on the deal, so I can just make money while I'm not doing nothing. But I also my mentor out here in Dallas, he actually let me like see how the process of a deal. So this year I plan on partnering with him to go into a deal, and I'm gonna use my 401k again to do the same thing, and that's how I plan to get my foot into the real estate game, like officially. So that's definitely like a whole gem right there, man. That you just put people on because a lot of people don't know about that. Like I didn't know that you could essentially what you're doing is building your own bank, and you don't have to go talk to nobody. And what threw me, I was like, oh, because I was learning about all the loan terms and all the interest, but you're paying that back to your future self, basically. So as long as you're willing to bet on yourself and understand that you could outperform whatever that money would be doing that's just sitting in your 401k. I mean, you might have it in the stock market or whatever kind of funds you got it, or it might just be sitting there doing nothing. And some people do that too. They just have it sitting there or whatever. But just the fact that you want to be smart and take some type of do that route, now you have access to a whole set of funds that can go make a deal happen for you. So
yeah, man, you got to think about, like, for me, if your 401k is earning, I don't know, 8%, right? Some are earning more, some are earning less. But if it's earning 8%, and you can go buy, like, let's say I only got 8% cash on cash return on that rental property, right? People will say, well, why would you take money out at eight, that's making 8% to go do something that's making 8%? But you got to remember that first deal got me in the door. That first deal got me a property with equity in it. That's why I love real estate. It doesn't just pay you one way; it pays you four ways. And so I was able to get a return through cash flow, but that's not the only return that I get. I also got equity, right? Because I walked into net worth, right? And so I bought a property for 115 that was worth 150. So I got instant equity. I also got paid from debt paydown because my tenant was paying the mortgage and all the
Yep.
expenses associated with the property, right? And then I also got paid from the tax benefits because I hadn't owned the property before that. But now that I had a property, I had a business that owned the property, and I was able to write off a lot of the things and the expenses and things that I was spending money on. So I actually, like, even though I bought a property and I was able to, like, the tax savings that it gets you is a huge benefit too because I have those write offs. It helped me keep more of the money I make in my day job because your earned income is the highest taxed income you can make. And so it's a huge benefit. So you got to think of it, if you're going to invest it into something like real estate, it's more than just the cash flow or the cash on cash return percentage that you get that you need to think about, right? And that doesn't even talk about the fact that I could leverage, and I leverage that property, the equity of that property, to go buy more properties, right? And so my return on that investment on that first deal might have only been 8%, but I might have bought 10 more deals that all yielded 8 to 10% off of that one deal. And so my ROI on that first 401k loan is probably infinite. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's crazy too when you think about, because like a lot of people don't think about all that goes into real estate where you have tenants paying down to like some of that stuff. People just think, oh, I'm gonna buy it, flip it, and be done, and nobody takes into account like, oh no, you also bought equity, and like you mentioned, your equity was what allowed you to it was like a catalyst to everything that you had going forward, and so that's like it pretty much gave you like an exponential growth pattern instead of like if you had just thought about it, real quick, like, oh, I'm gonna do this like a little quick flip or something like that. It might not have worked out that way. So
Yep.
that's something that also that I think is real big, especially in the real estate game, and that's what kind of drew me to it as well. Because now that I'm starting to hear like other people talk about the real estate game and how they like do different deals, because I mean, there's so many different ways you could do things in the real estate game. Like
Yeah,
that's
man.
what I think is drawing a lot of people to it, man, and being able to, not only increase your net worth, but be able to make some passive income, also tax benefits and all things of that nature. But
Yeah,
what I
man. It's
really
a phenomenal tool, man.
what I want to ask you is like, how do you go about looking for your deals? Like, how do you find your deals per se?
Yeah, so I find pretty much all of my deals through off market marketing, and so I send direct mail typically to direct to sellers and ask if they're looking to sell their home or would like to sell their home or get a cash offer. And then those that are interested will reply, and I'll buy direct to seller through direct mail.
All right, now I'm not gonna ask you. I know you got a book in there, of course, but I'm not gonna go too deep into it. But I want to know, like, what is something like, like, what do you know, like, when you analyze a deal, how do you know if it's like a like necessarily a good deal for you, or is it just are you just getting it real low per se, or instant equity? Like, what do you look for?
Yeah, I mean, there's some quick rules of thumb that people can use in order to figure out if they're looking at a decent deal. It also depends on what your investment strategy is. Some people don't invest for cash flow now. They're more concerned about just buying a property in a great area because they know they're going to hold it for 20 or 30 years and it's going to appreciate like crazy. And so they might be less concerned with what it's going to make me every month right now and more concerned about where it is because they're going to bank on the equity in the future. I'm a cash flow now and equity is a bonus kind of an investor. So, so for me, if I want to know if a deal is going to make me money, there's just some quick rules of thumb you think about, right? And so, typically, you want to buy something at a 30% discount, right? And you can just um, So if I'm talking to a seller on the phone, like somebody calls me from my mail, and you have to understand your market. And so I can be talking to somebody, and if they tell me that their house is in Springdale in a certain neighborhood and it's a 3 bed, 2 bath, I already know that that house is probably valued at somewhere between 175 to 225, depending on exactly where it is. Right. Probably a little higher now that the market's gone up. And so if I'm talking to them on the phone and I ask them what they're looking to sell it for, or why they're looking to sell it, right? And if I hear them say something like, I don't know, 175, 165, like for me, that I know already that's probably worth a look. Because if it's going to sell for 225 and you're willing to take a 165 just on the strength of the conversation, then there's some room there. Now, you go get there and you'll kind of see it and you'll determine what that offer really needs to be. But I just use that as a gauge. You need to be at about a 30% discount. So the actual rule of thumb that people follow is called the 70% rule. And so the idea is that you should buy something at 70% of the value or 30% discount minus the repairs that it needs. And so if something is valued at 100, you need to pay 70 for it. And if it needs $20,000 worth of work, you should only pay 50 for it. But you just kind of use that as a measuring stick, right? And so if I'm talking to somebody and I know that house is worth 100, and they're talking about, they'd want an offer between 60 and 70, then I know that's probably worth a look to go make an offer. And so you just kind of gauge it um, to know if it's a good deal. If the house is worth 100 and they're talking about they want 99, it's probably not going to work, right? And so you don't, you just kind of gauge based on the conversation. And if they don't give you a number, then there's ways you can just kind of let people know that, you're an investor and you have to buy at a price point that allows you to make money. People understand that, right? I don't like to use words like discount or cheap, right? And so if is interested in an offer and I haven't figured out if they're willing to take a discount, I'll typically say something like, hey, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what are you looking to sell the house for? And if they're like, well, I don't know, I'm not sure. What do you think you can offer? I'll typically say, well, without seeing it, it's difficult for me to know exactly what I'd offer, but I will let you know that like I'm an investor, so I'm buying this property solely for the purpose of either renting it out or selling it. And so I have to buy that property at a price point that allows me to put money into it to fix it up if it needs it, and then sell it or rent it out for a profit. And so I can't pay market value, or I typically can't pay what you could get if you use a realtor. And I just put that out there up front so that they know what they're getting into, and I know, and it helps me understand where their head's at. Because now what I've done is I've put them in a position to where their response is going to give me some information, right? So if I say, hey, I'm an investor, I have to buy at a price point that allows me to make money. And then I'll say something like, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. If you still want me to come make you an offer, I'd be glad to. If not, and you want to just list it with the realtor, get retail value, I totally understand. You let me know, right? The next thing out of their mouth is going to tell me something. It's either going to tell me that they want retail or it's going to tell me that they're willing to take a discount, right? So if they say, well, yeah, come on out, take a look, and we'll see, then I know that there's some reason that they are willing to take a discount. Or I've just told you I can't pay retail, right? And you want me to come take a look still? So there's some motivation there for you to sell at a discount that I haven't uncovered yet, but you're probably willing to take a discounted offer, right? Or else you wouldn't have me out there to waste your time. Or they say, yeah, I probably, it's probably not, you probably couldn't give me enough. That's, I'll talk to a realtor or something. Then that lets me know that they would have wanted retail. Right? And so there's ways you can kind of gauge if you're going to be able to get a good deal or not, just based on the conversation you have.
Okay. You probably one of the first people I see that still do like direct mail. Like most people I know they straight online or some type of like platform. So that's pretty dope to see.
Works.
Sure. Now I wanted to ask, are you like primarily like just do you just do buy and holds or are you like more of a fix and flip? Like what's your primary thing? Like what do you like to do?
I don't know, man. I don't. I mean, if I have to put a name to it, I would call myself a buy and hold investor because I like the rental properties. But truly, I'm none of those things. Truly, I'm just a deal finder, and then I
Okay.
monetize those deals, based on my financial situation or my business situation. So I flip houses, I wholesale houses. I don't wholesale, but I wholesale houses. I rent houses out. I've got some Airbnbs. Like I just focus on finding good deals and then I'll monetize them whatever way makes the most sense for my business. If that means I should flip it at that moment, then I'll flip it. If it means I want to keep it as a rental, I'll keep it as a rental. If it means I want to Airbnb it because it's got the highest potential and I've got the time to do it, then I'll do that. It's it's more about monetizing your leads than it is about like doing this one thing.
Okay. Now, you say you got between 65 and 70 properties. So at this point, my question is, how do you like? I know you're not probably still using a 401k to fund these deals. Like, how are you funding the deals now? Are you doing like out of pocket? Like, are you finding like some type of loans? Like, how are you funding deals now?
Yeah, I typically use small local banks, and they'll fund. They typically fund 100% of my deals, so I don't usually have to bring anything to the table.
Damn. All right. Shit, I didn't know that. But so how do you go about managing all these properties and stuff? Like, you just got a property manager. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, um, so 16 doors are about an hour away. So I have a property manager for those. Um, 25 of those doors are 50-50 owned with a partner. So I manage half of those and he manages the other half. And then the rest I manage. And when I say I, my wife is our property manager. So she manages those. Um, it's just easier. You know, property managers are okay. It takes some work to find good ones. And I think if you have the capacity to keep it in house and pay somebody to do it that's on your payroll, then it's a good solution. So that person right now for us is my wife.
Man. Now, what goes into, I guess, far as building up the network and things of that nature? Like, so far as putting together, like, I guess a team. I mean, I know you said it's in house, but like, what do y'all look for when y'all are like screening tenants, things of that nature? Because I know it's not just like as simple as people make it out to be. Because I know people in real estate, and this I hear a lot of complaints.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, if you're going to own property and rent it out, you need to figure out how to get good at tenant selection, or you need to figure out how to hire somebody that's really good at tenant selection, which means you got to be good at knowing that somebody else is good at tenant selection. So all of that means you need to figure out how to be good at tenant selection, whether you're going to hire somebody or you got to do it, right? Period. So if you're thinking about renting out property, you need to go figure that part out, right? Because even if you're going to pay somebody else to do it, how are you going to know they're good at it, right? So you need to be able to figure out how to be good at tenant selection. Tenant selection is going to make or break you. And so for us, man, I don't try to overcomplicate it, man. I try to make sure. So I just have a strict criteria. I need my applicants have to make 2.5 to 3 times the monthly rent. So that's what they need to be bringing in a month. If the rent's 1,000, I need to see them making at least 3,000 a month, right? Um, um, I need. I do a credit and background check for every applicant, no matter what. They got to do it. If they're an adult and they're going to live in there and they're going to be paying, I got to get a credit and background check, right? Now, does that mean I won't rent to somebody with bad credit? No, I mean, a credit score, like a bad credit score, doesn't rule people out. What rules people out is why their credit may be bad. And so there's a lot of things that happen in people's lives that cause your credit to be bad that don't really have an impact, a bearing on whether you'll be a good or a bad tenant, right? Like medical debt is crazy expensive. Most people can't afford to pay medical bills out of pocket. And so if they've had some crazy medical something, right? Like it's hard for people to get caught up on that stuff. So if you've got medical debt and collections, I typically won't hold that against you. It's freaking expensive, man. Um, but or if you've got a divorce, like divorces destroy your credit. right? And so, I'm not going to hold a divorce against somebody and use that as a judge to whether or not they're going to pay their rent or not. But if you are in collections because you haven't paid your cell phone bill, or you haven't paid your cable bill, or your light bill, normal
Yeah.
utilities, like all that stuff is important to people. If you ain't paying that, you definitely not going to be paying me. So that's
Yeah.
stuff that's a red flag to me. That makes sense.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so we look for that stuff, man. You know, just because you've been in trouble with the law doesn't mean we won't rent to you either. It just depends on what it is, right? Because you also have to think about too. If I'm renting a multifamily, you got to be careful who you put in there based on what they might have done in the past. Because you got to think about the other people that live there too, right? And so you just use your best judgment and common sense, and don't break any laws as far as like fair housing laws. Um, so the first person that meets our criteria, that's what we rent to. It's all about the process, the criteria, strict, and it's strict, but it's fair, and it's the same every time. And as long as that formula is in place, first person that meets it, that's who you rent to.
Okay. Now I know you mentioned like you got like family, like your wife and stuff helps you out with this. Now I wanted to ask you what your opinion is, what kind of like bringing people along with you on the journey, because a lot of times people bring family into what they got going on business wise. And I mean, it could go, good or bad. I just wanted to see what your thoughts about, bringing family in, where you lie with that.
Oh man, my wife is my property manager, and my sister in law does everything for us, handyman stuff. She's an important part of our business. So I get it, man. It's either for some people or it's not for some people. Everybody's family is different, right? And so I can't speak for everybody's family situation. I can just tell you what I feel. I feel like I'm supposed to bring people with me. And if I'm supposed to bring people with me, why am I not going to look at the people who are right here with me every day, right? And try to bring them along with me. Now, doesn't mean it'll work out. No, it may not work out. That's okay. You just pivot, you know. And I think does that mean that you just kind of willy nilly do stuff? No, I mean, I think you have to have clear expectations, clear goals. You got to treat it like a business, right? And so people understand that. And so just be clear about what it is that you're wanting from somebody and what your expectations are. It's your business. So it's your responsibility to lay out what the expectations are. And then you hold people accountable to those expectations like you would hold anybody else accountable. But I think you got to set that table correctly from Jump Street, right? Especially when you're dealing with family. And so, I mean, I don't have a problem dealing with family, man. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to bring them along. But again, my family ain't everybody's family.
Yeah.
Some people's families are different. So, I mean, you gotta do whatever you think is best in that situation. But I totally get it when people say they don't want to work with family. Like, I understand that. Like, I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's the call that they're making based on their family experience.
Okay. Now, I just want to ask, like, what's one piece of advice, right, like that you would give somebody that's trying to get started in real estate, like based off of your experience? Because I mean, you went on a whole rapid speed type deal in 4 years, but for somebody that's just getting started, what would you like? What was the piece of advice you would give them?
Yeah. Uh, don't worry about anything else besides finding a good deal. If you find a good deal, everything else becomes easy. Everything else falls into place. And honestly, nothing else matters unless you have a deal. So I think that the cool part about real estate is that it's super flexible. There's a million ways to get into the game. There's a million different methods. You can use private money, your money, bank money. You can find single families, multi-families, apartment buildings. You can do like there's a hundred. You can do owner financing, subject to financing. Like there's so many ways that people kind of get caught up in like trying to figure out what their niche is going to be, and they get so overwhelmed. And the reality is, it doesn't matter what you want to do in real estate. If you don't buy a good deal, you won't make money. I don't care what your exit strategy is. You have to buy it right in order for you to make money. If you want to flip it, wholesale it, hotel it, Airbnb it, all of it requires you to buy something at the right price point so that you can turn a profit from it. So all that to me says Figure out what a good deal looks like in your market. Figure out how you're going to find good deals. Go find a good deal. Worry about the rest later. If you've got a good deal, the money will come. People will throw money at you if you truly have a good deal. So just go find a good deal. People are worried about who's going to be their contractor, who's going to be their banker, who's going to be the title company, how I'm gonna find, a property manager. People are trying to solve problems for things that don't matter until you get a deal anyway. Who cares who's gonna manage it? If you don't have something to buy it, you don't have nothing to manage. Who cares who's gonna repair it and renovate it? If you don't have a deal for them to work on, they're not gonna give you an estimate. They don't care. You don't got nothing for them. You need to go find a
Yeah.
deal first.
Okay. And now, what I want you to talk about, because I know you have a book that you offer. I know you coach people. And you just talk about that a little bit, what you got to offer to people, man, because you got a lot of game to give.
Yeah, man. I try to have something for everybody at different price points. So it just depends on what you want, right? And so I've got a free book, henrywashington.com. You can go to henrywashington.com. You can get my free book. Just got to pay the shipping. The book is about how to use the small banks to finance your deals with little to no money out of your pocket. So if you just want some free, quick game, that's one way to get some. I've got a couple of courses. I've got a course on how to finance deals with little to no money with small banks, and I've got a course on how to find great real estate deals. I also have a course on house hacking. House hacking is one of the best strategies for getting started in real estate. So each one of those courses is $40. You can get those at the link in my Instagram bio. I'm at the Henry Washington on Instagram. So that's a fairly low ticket way to get you some great information that can help make you all kinds of money. And then if you wanted to go that next step and you want that extra help and you want me to help guide you on your real estate journey, I have a mentorship program, but that's an application process. So you go to the link in my bio and you'll see a link that says apply for my high level mentorship program. And you go there and you can apply, and then I'll look at your application, and then I may give you a call and interview you. So, and we are taking applicants right now. And so, but that's a whole different thing. That's if you want to go the extra mile and get mentorship and coaching on your journey. So all kinds of stuff, man.
Oh, man. Hey, once again, man, you got a lot of game to give, man. You're a legend in the game itself, man, already. 4 years in, and you're doing it bigger than a lot of people that's been doing this for, a decade. So, yeah, and I'm, just happy to have you on. Glad to, be able to chop it up with you. Because a lot of people don't have this type of information, don't even see it, and especially when you
Yeah,
see somebody like you doing it, it just make all the difference. Because, a lot of
yeah,
people don't
man.
think we could be even capable of us for us to do that. So, I got one last segment, man. I know you busy, man. You've been out of properties all day, so I ain't trying to hold you too long. But I do this one last segment, man. We do a talk to the culture. I run off 5 questions, and you just answer to the best of your abilities. So, first question is, what does wealth look like to you?
Wealth to me is providing opportunity to my children's children. Right. I don't want my kids to let money stop them from living their purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I want them to be able to do what it is they feel like they're called to do, not what they have to do because they got bills to pay and things to do. Now, does that mean I just want my kids to have a silver spoon? No, they're gonna learn how to earn for themselves. They're gonna learn how to make a way for themselves. Um, but I also want them to have the freedom to do what they're called to do. And for me, that's providing wealth in a way that allows them to be able to do that.
Okay. Second question, I always get a book recommendation from everybody. I know you got your own book, so y'all can tap into that. If you can just give somebody else an additional book to go along with that, what would you recommend?
Yeah, man, I like The Alchemist. I'm more of a I'm not a real big self help book guy. Don't get me wrong, I like some self help books, but I got to be like in the right mindset or wanting information on a very specific thing. But for me, like books about mindset and books about like living in your purpose are big for me, and that's why I really enjoyed The Alchemist, because it's really about like if you're walking in your purpose, that the universe will help you. It'll get out of your way, and it's just a really good book for mindset.
No, that is a dope book. I read that book like last year actually. So no, that's
Yeah.
a very good book. The next question is, because we tailor to the Black community here, I always ask everybody that comes on, what is one thing you think the Black community can improve on?
Yeah, man. I think we, I'll give you two because they kind of go hand in hand. Is we got to fight imposter syndrome, uh, because we're taught our whole lives through media, through society that we're not smart and that we're not pretty and that we can't do things that other people get to do. And so that when you start a business and when you start providing value to people, whether that's a business or something you do for free, whenever you start putting your message out there for people, that voice in your head creeps in. And that happens for anybody, white, black, and different. But I feel like it's amplified with us because society has been telling us that we're no good from day one. And so I dealt with a lot of that when I started coaching and teaching and I started making courses. I tell people like I rewrote the first couple of chapters in my course maybe like 3 or 4 times just because every time I would write something, I'd be like, man, nobody wants to hear that from me. Man, nobody's trying to listen to that. Man, nobody wants to hear that from me. And that was that voice in my head telling me I wasn't good enough and that people didn't want to hear what I had to say. And that's just not true. So we got to learn to fight that imposter syndrome more so than somebody who doesn't like us because of what society teaches us. And the other thing that we have to deal with and we have to understand is that we deserve the good that comes from the work that we put in to our businesses, and we deserve the wealth that we get because, again, society teaches us that we're not worthy of any of those things. And so, a lot of people that look like us don't even get started, and it's really because deep down inside we feel like we don't deserve the good that comes from that, and we really have to be conscious of that feeling and fight through it because we do deserve it, and there are people that are counting on us to get to that point so that we can reach back and bring them with us and start this ripple effect of lifting each other up.
Okay. And now I'll also ask everybody this. I mean, you're already doing a lot of big things though, so it's gonna be a little interesting answer, but what's next for you? Like what do you have planned? What's next on the list for you, man?
Man, I'm just gonna keep going. I tell people, I know you're supposed to have some big sexy answer for that question, some big thought provoking. I don't. For me, I feel like I'm walking in my purpose. And as long as I continue to walk in my purpose, God opens doors, and those doors may be things that I never would have dreamed about. So I'm just going to keep walking in my purpose. I'm going to keep buying property, and I'm going to keep helping people. And I'll keep buying doors until God or my wife tells me to stop. That's it.
Okay. And my last question, everybody want to know, how to get a hold of Henry, man. Plug yourself, tell them how they can find you, where they can get a hold of you at and all that.
Yep, man. Instagram's the best place. Instagram and TikTok. I'm at the Henry Washington on Instagram and TikTok. That's the best place to find me. Or you can check out my website, henrywashington.com. Again, that free book is there. So easy to find, man.
Okay, man. And once again, my brother, I want to thank you for coming through, man. It's been a long time coming, but hey, this perfect timing is when it happens. So I appreciate you coming on, man. Appreciate you for dropping game. And like we always say on this platform, man, we'll get a success if everyone around you is still struggling. Each one reach one, each one teach one, man. Appreciate you again, Henry, for coming through, man. We out.